Welcome the anointed ones. They didn't just try to embarrass you, they tried to spiritually assassinate your character in broad daylight. Every chosen one who's ever been through public humiliation knows it's not just a bad moment, it's a ceremony. One so ancient and psychological, it's been repeated for centuries under new names. Cancel culture, smear campaigns, silent sabotage. It's the same old dark ritual, dressed in modern fashion. They don't gather around fires anymore. They gather around gossip, and the flames are now digital. What they called exposing you was never about truth. It was about power. And what they didn't realize is that humiliation doesn't kill the chosen one. It activates discernment. They thought you'd be too broken to think, too shocked to respond, too desperate to defend yourself. But the moment you stopped reacting and started reading the energy, the ritual reversed. You stopped being the sacrifice and became the silent observer. Here's the cosmic irony. Psychological studies prove that public shame triggers the same brain response as physical pain. So when they dragged your name, your mind registered it like a stabbing. But what they didn't account for is that your spirit had already been through the fire before. You didn't just survive, you transmuted the pain into awareness. You upgraded your spiritual software while they were still buffering in bitterness. And let's be honest, your discernment during that whole ordeal was elite. You could feel lies before they were spoken. You could sense betrayal 2 conversations ahead. You were out there dodging spiritual bullets with the precision of someone who had divine Wi-Fi. Meanwhile, they thought they were breaking you down, not realizing you were quietly decoding their every move like a spiritual detective with a smirk. So, yes, the humiliation ritual was real. It was orchestrated. It was dark. But your survival wasn't luck. It was prophecy. Because the same stage they used to shame you will soon host your vindication. And when that curtain rises again, it won't be a ritual. It'll be revelation. Number 1. The humiliation was a test of frequency, not character. They didn't go after your reputation because of who you were. They went after your energy. The goal wasn't to prove you wrong. It was to drag your spirit out of alignment. The entire ordeal was designed to provoke you, confuse you, and make you question your worth until you started vibrating at their level. That's how spiritual warfare works. It's never about the event itself. It's about what that event does to your frequency. They wanted you angry, desperate to be heard, hungry for revenge. They needed you to feed the chaos. But you didn't. You felt the sting, yes, but something inside you refused to surrender your peace. Your discernment recognized that humiliation was never a verdict. It was bait. And when you didn't take it, when you stayed calm while everything screamed for your reaction, you passed the real test. You kept your frequency stable when everything around you tried to distort it. That's what they'll never understand. Surviving humiliation isn't about keeping your image clean. It's about keeping your energy clear. Because once you drop into bitterness or guilt, they win. That's when your light starts dimming. Not because God left you, but because you tuned into a lower station. You knew better. You stayed aligned with your source even while your name was dragged through the mud. You refused to let dirty hands smudge your spirit. And the result? You rose higher without saying a word. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was calibration. While they plotted your downfall, you were busy restoring your internal balance. That's why you didn't just survive, you evolved. The humiliation wasn't meant to expose your flaws. It was meant to test your vibration. And when all the noise died down, your frequency was still intact, unbroken, unbothered, untouchable. That's when heaven stamped its quiet approval over your soul and said, "Now they know. This one cannot be shaken." Number 2, they needed to shatter your image because they couldn't enter your essence. When people realize they can't control you, they shift tactics. They stop trying to reach your heart and start trying to stain your name. That's what happened to you. They couldn't access your inner world, the peace, wisdom, and strength that you carry. So they went after the next best thing, how others saw you. They thought if they could make people question your character, they could make you question yourself. But they never understood that your identity isn't built on perception, it's built on truth. They launched rumors, twisted stories, and exaggerated mistakes because it gave them a sense of control over something they could never own, your authenticity. What they attacked was your reflection, not your reality. They were throwing mud at a mirror, hoping it would somehow dirty your soul. But mirrors clean. Souls don't crack that easily. And every attempt to drag you only revealed how spiritually blocked they were. You stayed grounded, not because it didn't hurt, but because you knew that public opinion is temporary, while essence is eternal. You started to see through the layers of their performance. You realized their obsession with destroying your image wasn't random, it was spiritual jealousy. They were witnessing someone who lives from within, someone whose validation comes from alignment, not applause. That threatened them. Because while they were busy maintaining appearances, you were busy maintaining peace. And the truth is, they failed spectacularly. They thought they were breaking you down, but they were actually making you more visible to the right eyes. People eventually sensed the purity in your energy, and the lies began to collapse under their own weight. What was meant to humiliate you became evidence of your strength. You stood there, untouchable, because your essence was never for sale. They couldn't enter it, control it, or understand it, and that's exactly why they had to attack it from the outside. Number 3. Your isolation was the cleansing room of prophets. When everything went quiet and people started distancing themselves, it felt like punishment. The silence after the chaos was deafening, almost cruel. But that isolation was never rejection. It was refinement. That was the stage where God began removing the noise so you could finally hear the real message. The people who walked away weren't meant to stay for the version of you that was about to be revealed. They were only assigned to your confusion, not your clarity. During that time, your discernment grew sharper because you no longer had external distractions. You began to see who truly cared and who only stayed because your presence benefited them. That's when you learned that loyalty isn't proven when you're celebrated. It's proven when you're silent, misunderstood, and alone. In that stillness, your spirit detoxed from validation. You stopped needing to be seen and started needing to be aligned. Isolation forced you to confront yourself, your fears, your doubts, your unhealed pieces. You faced things you had buried under people's opinions, and in that solitude, you found the kind of peace that no crowd could ever give you. That's why, when you finally re-emerged, you didn't sound the same, move the same, or tolerate the same. You had been recalibrated by divine silence. They thought isolating you would break you, but what it actually did was strengthen your spiritual immune system. You became immune to manipulation, immune to fake connections, immune to chaos. Your energy began rejecting what no longer resonated with your purpose. The loneliness that once hurt started feeling sacred, because you realized it was in that space that heaven was closest. So yes, the isolation was real, but so was the transformation. You walked into that season feeling abandoned and walked out carrying a frequency that could no longer be contaminated. That's why your peace now disturbs people. It was purified in the kind of silence they're too afraid to sit in. Number 4, their goal was psychological collapse, but you decoded the ritual in real time. The humiliation wasn't meant to just bruise your pride, it was carefully designed to dismantle your mind. They wanted to overload your emotions until you couldn't think straight. Every lie, every whisper, every moment of public shame was a psychological tactic meant to force you into confusion. If they could get you to doubt your intuition, They could control your next move. It was never about truth. It was about destabilization. But what they underestimated was your ability to observe patterns even while under pressure. Your discernment became your survival tool. You started noticing timing, motives, and emotional cues that most people would have missed. Instead of reacting, you studied. Instead of crumbling, you started connecting dots. That's when the whole game changed. They wanted you disoriented, but you started to decode their strategy in real time. You saw how certain people acted in sync, how certain events weren't random, and how energy shifted right before an attack. That awareness broke their spell before it could fully take hold. The more you understood the pattern, the less power the humiliation had. You began to realize that the ritual was never about you being wrong. It was about you being strong. They needed to break your confidence to make you dependent on their approval again. But once you saw that manipulation for what it was, you stepped out of the trap completely. You didn't need to defend yourself. You just needed to stay centered. That was your victory, not a dramatic comeback, but mental clarity. While they were busy trying to study your weakness, you were busy studying their tactics. And the moment you stopped asking, why would they do this, and started understanding, this is how energy tests consciousness, you broke the loop. You didn't just survive the attack, you evolved mid-battle. And that's what they never expected, that you would decode their ritual faster than they could complete it. Number 5. The ritual was permissioned by God to expose spiritual hierarchies. What happened to you wasn't random, it was allowed, not to humiliate you, but to reveal what was hidden. When the chaos began, it looked like injustice, it looked like betrayal, it looked like life was falling apart for no reason, but in reality, it was divine permission in action. God didn't cause the ritual, He simply allowed it to happen because it was the fastest way to expose who everyone truly was. Your enemies didn't realize they were being used as instruments of revelation. The humiliation wasn't your downfall. It was the sorting ground of spirits. Every person involved revealed their rank without even knowing it. Those guided by light showed compassion, wisdom, and restraint. Those controlled by shadow showed jealousy, cruelty, and deceit. Heaven doesn't judge by titles or appearances. It judges by energy, by frequency, by the posture of the heart when pressure hits. The ritual became a divine X-ray, exposing what words could never explain. The masks came off, and God made sure you saw exactly who stood with you and who hid behind smiles. That's why, even in your lowest moment, there was a strange calm surrounding your spirit. Deep down, you sensed something bigger was taking place, that this was not destruction, but reorganization. While you were being publicly ridiculed, heaven was privately promoting you. You were being elevated to a spiritual rank that required exposure of every false connection. The ritual wasn't punishment, it was protocol. And once the storm settled, you noticed the shift. The people who once stood above you energetically started to lose their grip. Their influence faded, their masks cracked, and their energy dimmed. Meanwhile, your peace deepened, your insight sharpened, and your authority expanded. That's what divine order looks like. Heaven allowing temporary chaos to establish eternal clarity. What looked like humiliation was simply the universe adjusting the throne to fit the rightful heir. Number 6. They wanted to reduce you to emotion, but you stayed in observation. Their plan depended on your reaction. They needed you to explode, to defend yourself, to prove their accusations true through your frustration. Every move they made was meant to drag you out of alignment and into chaos. They wanted you to operate from emotion so that you'd lose your spiritual balance. The moment you became reactive, you would have been easy to manipulate, easy to frame, easy to control, but you didn't take the bait. You refused to dance to their frequency. You stayed calm, observant, and grounded in truth, and that's what dismantled their strategy. They couldn't understand how you were still composed when everything around you was designed to shake you. That's what threw them off. You didn't match their anger with anger. You didn't fight lies with noise. You let your stillness become your defense. That's the highest form of emotional intelligence, responding from clarity, not chaos. You understood that sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's evidence that you've outgrown the need to explain yourself to those who thrive on misunderstanding you. Your discernment helped you see the trap for what it was, emotional bait disguised as justice. The moment you noticed the pattern, you realized that reacting would only feed the narrative. So instead of feeding the fire, you withdrew your energy completely. You became a mirror, reflecting their projections back at them without absorbing any of it. That's when the power dynamic shifted. They lost control because your peace starved their agenda. And in that space of observation, you discovered something profound. Emotion is sacred energy. It's not meant to be wasted on battles designed to drain you. By staying in observation, you reclaimed ownership of your energy. They tried to turn you into a puppet, but you stayed the observer, the one holding the strings. That's what mastery looks like, keeping your composure when the world expects your collapse. Number 7. They orchestrated public shame because private manipulation failed. Before they tried to ruin your image, they tried to control your mind. It started quietly. Through guilt trips, subtle manipulation, and small psychological games meant to make you doubt yourself. They tested how easily they could influence your emotions, how quickly you would fold under pressure. But every attempt failed. You didn't bend to guilt. You didn't respond to silent treatment. You didn't need their approval to feel valuable. That's when they realized that controlling you privately wasn't possible, so they decided to attack you publicly. Public humiliation became their last resort, the desperate move of people who had already lost access to your inner world. They wanted to strip you of dignity, thinking that if enough eyes witnessed your fall, it would break your confidence. What they didn't realize was that they were exposing themselves in the process. Because cruelty is loud, and no matter how convincing the lies sounded, something in their energy betrayed them. People could feel it. The same audience they tried to turn against you began to sense something off about their story. They didn't realize that in trying to destroy your reputation, they were documenting their own character. Their attempt to shame you became their confession. Every insult revealed their bitterness. Every accusation uncovered their obsession. The more they spoke against you, the clearer it became that the real issue wasn't who you were. It was who they could never be. And while they worked tirelessly to drag your name, you stayed grounded. You let time and truth do what explanations never could. In the end, the humiliation they planned for you became a mirror that reflected their darkness. They tried to bury you in lies, not knowing your peace was already rooted too deep to be uprooted. You didn't just survive their public attack, you turned it into undeniable evidence of your strength. What was meant to destroy your credibility became the moment heaven revealed your authenticity. Number 8. Discernment didn't just save you. It translated the ritual's hidden language. What happened to you wasn't just betrayal, it was communication. Every lie, every rumor, every cold stare carried coded messages from the spiritual realm. On the surface, it looked like drama, but underneath it was revelation. The people who betrayed you were unknowingly acting out messages your soul needed to see. Their behavior wasn't random, it was symbolic. And your discernment, that sharp inner knowing that others often call too sensitive, became the decoder. You weren't paranoid, you were fluent in the unseen. Your spirit started catching what your ears couldn't. You could sense motives before words were even spoken. You began to understand that every person's reaction to your light revealed their alignment. The betrayal wasn't just about losing relationships. It was about learning spiritual language. Every whisper was heaven saying, "Pay attention here." Every fake apology was God showing you the difference between remorse and manipulation. You started seeing the truth behind tone, timing, and energy. You realized that life speaks in patterns, not paragraphs. That's what separated you from the crowd. While others were busy reacting emotionally, you were quietly studying the symbols. You stopped taking things personally because you saw the divine choreography behind the chaos. The humiliation ritual wasn't random cruelty, it was coded instruction. It showed you what love without integrity looks like, what loyalty without spirit feels like, and what envy disguised as friendship sounds like. It wasn't meant to destroy you, it was meant to teach you fluency in divine communication. And because of that discernment, you didn't just survive, you evolved. You no longer need long explanations or proof to know when something's off. Your spirit speaks directly now. The same experiences that were meant to confuse you became your training ground for higher perception. Now, when life moves, you don't panic, you listen, because you've learned that everything, even betrayal, speaks the language of transformation to those who know how to hear it. Number 9. The ritual forced you to unlearn compassion for the unrepentant. Before the humiliation, your heart was open to everyone. You believed that love could fix anything, that patience could heal anyone, and that empathy could reach even the coldest souls. But the ritual shattered that illusion. It showed you that some people don't want healing. They want control. They mistake your compassion for weakness and use your kindness as a door back into your energy. You learned the hard way that not everyone who cries for forgiveness feels remorse. Some only apologize because they miss the benefits of being close to you. That experience forced you to reevaluate what compassion really means. True compassion doesn't mean letting people continue to hurt you while you call it love. It means having the strength to say, "I can care about you," and still close the door. You stopped trying to save those who made a sport out of wounding you. You realized that redemption is a personal choice, not a group project. If someone refuses to change, your suffering won't convince them to. That lesson didn't make you cold, it made you wise. You didn't lose your softness, you learned how to protect it. You stopped handing out second chances to people who never earned the first one. You stopped mistaking your sensitivity for a duty to endure mistreatment. And the more you pulled back your energy, the more you saw who actually valued you and who only valued what they could take from you. Now your love has boundaries. You no longer chase closure or validation. You give compassion where there's accountability and distance where there's deceit. That's not bitterness. That's balance. The ritual purified your heart without hardening it. You still love deeply, but now your love has wisdom. You no longer rescue those who drown willingly. You simply bless them from the shore and keep walking in peace. Number 10. You realized humiliation is the shadow's last resort. There comes a point when the forces working against you run out of strategies. They've tried manipulation, guilt, control, and emotional pressure. None of it worked. You didn't bend to their rules, you didn't give up your peace, and you didn't feed their ego. That's when humiliation becomes their final move. It's the shadow's last resort, the attempt to destroy your name when it couldn't destroy your spirit. It's not strength that drives them to do it, it's frustration. They humiliate what they can't influence. They try to publicly strip what they can't privately possess. The act itself is spiritual desperation. When dark energy realizes it has no authority over your soul, it throws a tantrum. It needs an audience to feel powerful again, because without your emotional reaction, it's nothing. That's why, when they tried to drag you through public shame, it wasn't evidence of your weakness. It was confirmation of your victory. They had to resort to noise because silence no longer worked on you. You had become immune to their subtle tactics, and that terrified them. You recognized it for what it was, not punishment, but exposure. Humiliation is always a revelation of energy imbalance. It reveals who's losing control, not who's guilty. The more desperate they became to prove something about you, the clearer it became that they were actually trying to cover up something about themselves. Every insult they threw was a confession. Every smear was an admission that your light had outgrown their comfort zone. And so, instead of fighting back, you watched. You let them unravel in their own performance. The calm you carried wasn't arrogance, it was spiritual confirmation that the battle was already over. They thought they were destroying your credibility, but all they did was announce your spiritual promotion. Because once darkness reaches for humiliation, it's already out of power. The shadow doesn't humiliate winners. It humbles itself, trying to imitate them. Number 11. Your name became a mirror for collective guilt. After the dust settled, your name began to carry weight, not because of what you did, but because of what they did to you. Every time your name comes up, it pulls at their conscience. It reminds them of the part they played, the lies they believed, and the cruelty they justified. You no longer need to confront them. Your existence has become its own form of truth. You don't haunt them out of vengeance. You haunt them through memory. Your name became a mirror they can't look into for too long because it reflects every shadow they tried to project onto you. When people wrong someone pure-hearted, the guilt never leaves cleanly. It lingers in their spirit like unfinished business. They might laugh it off publicly, but deep down, they feel the weight every time they see you thriving. They remember the conversations they had, the silence they chose, and the moments they could have spoken up but didn't. Now your success doesn't just inspire, it convicts. Because seeing you rise means facing the undeniable truth. They were wrong. This isn't karma as punishment, it's karma as reflection. The universe doesn't always strike people down, sometimes it just holds up a mirror, and in that mirror they're forced to see the gap between who they pretended to be and who they truly were when your name was on their tongue. That's why some avoid you, not because they hate you, but because they can't bear the reminder of their own choices. You never had to seek revenge, because truth has a long memory. The same name they once tried to bury is now the very sound that exposes their guilt. You became living proof that purity doesn't need to retaliate. It simply rises, and in rising, it reveals everything false around it. Your name became more than identity. It became a reflection that demands accountability without you ever saying a word. Number 12. The fall they wanted you to have was the death of your lower self. When they plotted your downfall, they thought they were about to enjoy a front-row seat to your destruction. What they didn't realize was that the version of you they were attacking wasn't built to last anyway. That collapse wasn't your ending. It was your molting. The pain stripped away everything false. The need to explain, the hunger for validation, the desire to be liked by those who secretly despised your light. You didn't lose yourself. You lost the layers that never truly belonged to you. What they mistook for your breaking point was actually your breaking open. You stopped trying to be understood by those who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped negotiating your worth in rooms that benefited from your confusion. When the old you died, the noise died with it. And in that silence, the real you emerged. You began to see that their betrayal was divine choreography, a setup for resurrection, because every attack that was meant to bury you only buried the version of you that was still trying to earn human approval. They cheered for your fall, not knowing they were witnessing your initiation. Your lower self, the one that still cared about being liked, accepted, or validated, finally perished. And when it did, you became untouchable. You ascended into a realm of spiritual independence, where no rumor, rejection, or ridicule could alter your peace. That's what true ascension looks like. Not floating above pain, but walking through it without losing who you are. So while they were waiting for your humiliation to define you, heaven was watching your transformation redefine you. The version of you that emerged no longer needed to prove innocence or justify growth. You became your own validation. Your so-called fall wasn't the end of your story. It was the end of your bondage. What they thought was your death was actually your deliverance. Number 13. You learned that spiritual protection often looks like public misunderstanding. At first it felt cruel, being misunderstood, lied on, and misrepresented when all you ever carried was good intent. But what looked like betrayal was actually a form of divine concealment. God doesn't protect his chosen by making them popular or universally loved. He protects them by coding their truth in misunderstanding, so that only the spiritually mature can recognize it. Every false story told about you was actually a layer of camouflage, shielding your destiny from premature recognition. When the humiliation ritual began, it wasn't just about public shame. It was about divine encryption. Heaven allowed false narratives to circulate because not everyone deserved access to your authenticity. If your purpose had been fully understood too soon, too many unqualified hands would have tried to claim it, distort it, or use it for their own gain. So God hid you inside a misunderstanding. The lies became the wrapping paper around the truth. To the untrained eye, you looked defeated, but to the spiritually aware, you were being preserved. It's one of the hardest lessons the chosen ever learn, that divine favor often disguises itself as rejection. Being misjudged became your shield. Being mocked became your cover. Those who laughed at you didn't realize they were guarding the very anointing they envied. Every whisper against your name acted as a firewall against those not meant to walk with you. They thought they were destroying your reputation, but in truth, they were keeping your assignment pure. You eventually stopped defending yourself because you realized protection doesn't always come with explanation. God wasn't letting you be humiliated. He was letting you be hidden. The misunderstanding wasn't a punishment. It was a password. And when the appointed time came, your truth didn't need to be announced. It revealed itself. What they called shame was simply divine stealth in motion. Number 14. The same stage. They used to shame you will one day amplify you. Divine justice has a poetic rhythm. It doesn't remove the scene of your humiliation. It transforms it into your podium. The very stage where they mocked, ridiculed, and discredited you is destined to echo with your truth. The universe doesn't waste moments of pain. It recycles them into prophecy. What was once the arena of your public embarrassment becomes the arena of your vindication, not because you sought revenge, but because divine order insists on symmetry. The truth doesn't stay buried, it germinates. When they dragged your name through the mud, they thought it would stain you forever. But mud only sticks to what isn't moving, and you kept moving. Your resilience became your resurrection. Every insult, every smear, every attempt to expose you became spiritual fertilizer. The same people who once doubted you will have no choice but to reference you when they discuss strength, grace, and divine turnaround. Because when God decides to restore, he doesn't pick a new platform, he reclaims the old one. And here's the irony. They built the stage, but heaven rewrote the script. The audience that once gathered to laugh will witness the reversal. You won't even need to announce your comeback. Your growth will broadcast it for you. The silence that followed your humiliation became your power's incubation. You learned, healed, and evolved while they were busy rehearsing the same old lies. Then, without warning, the light shifts. The same world that thought it knew your story will have to relearn it. This time from your voice. That's divine symmetry, not erasing history, but reinterpreting it. You won't return to prove them wrong. You'll return as proof that they never had the authority to define you. What they meant for shame becomes your stage name, and the applause won't be for revenge, but for revelation. Conclusion: what you endured was never ordinary, and the truths uncovered through your trial are far deeper than anyone around you could ever comprehend. Every moment of humiliation, every whisper, every betrayal wasn't just an attack. It was a lesson, a divine calibration, and a test of frequency that only a chosen one could pass. You weren't broken by what they tried to do. You were elevated. You saw through the masks, decoded the hidden messages, and learned to protect your energy in ways they could never understand. Every lie told about you, every attempt to manipulate or shame you, ultimately revealed the real nature of those around you while sharpening your discernment and reinforcing your spiritual armor. You transformed what was meant to be your downfall into your ascension. The stage that once echoed with mockery will one day amplify your truth. The energy that tried to destabilize you only refined your alignment. The humiliation that was supposed to dim your light became the catalyst for your clarity, power, and mastery. You learned to love wisely, observe without reaction, and rise without proving anything to anyone. Your enemies became unwilling mirrors, reflecting their own guilt and weaknesses while you moved quietly, deliberately, and confidently through your purpose. The chaos they orchestrated turned into a roadmap of understanding, a guide to navigating human shadows while staying rooted in divine truth. This isn't just survival, this is transformation at the highest level. You now operate from a space that combines wisdom, discernment, and energy mastery. Your journey proves that pain is not the opposite of power. It is the gateway to it. Every attack you faced, every ritual they attempted, was a stepping stone to the version of you that cannot be shaken, cannot be misrepresented, and cannot be denied. You are no longer the person they tried to humiliate. You are the chosen one who emerged with clarity, authority, and unstoppable purpose. If this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss another insight that empowers your journey. Like this video to affirm your growth, share it to inspire someone else navigating their own trials, and comment below to declare your truth and resilience. The world needs more witnesses to these awakenings, and your story could be the spark that changes someone else's path. Stay grounded, stay discerning, and never let anyone else define your worth. Your power is undeniable. God bless you.